Hello and welcome back to the Horizon Education training videos. In this video, I will be going over the SAT Reading Prezi. I'd like to first go over briefly how to reach the Prezi presentations. Once again, just go to our website at horizoneducation.com. It will take you to the home page. Click Login at the top. And if you're still being prompted for a password, just enter PREP, P-R-E-P, in all lowercase, and it will take you to this page that has every Prezi presentation. Again, I would advise referring to your syllabus to see exactly what Prezi presentations are going to be relevant for specific days in your class. Okay. Today we'll be going over the SAT Reading Prezi for the test prep program that you're running at your school. SAT Reading. Once this is all loaded up, which it does take a little bit of time sometimes, again, all the Prezis start off with a warm-up, and for these later Prezis, they also include quick reviews. So in this Prezi presentation, you can see the quick review is to explain how a student would use the following strategies on the reading section. Right, so it's reminding students about the strategies that they learned in the intro. Right, marking out the passage, summarizing, pick and skip, referring back to the passage, reading the question first, and process of elimination. Right. And this is just a way for us to repeatedly show them the makeup of the SAT, right? The three main sections. Okay. And here's a comparison of the SAT and the SAT reading sections. The ACT reading section is 35 minutes long on a scale score from 1 to 36. It is multiple choice. It has 4 long passages. Reading comprehension with a focus on showing understanding of what is directly stated, statements with implied meanings, and there is little emphasis on vocabulary. For the SAT, it is 65 minutes long. The scale scores between 200 to 800. There are 52 multiple choice questions, 4 single passages, and 1 paired passage. And the questions are on vocabulary and context, command of evidence, analysis in history and social studies and science, and vocabulary is no longer emphasized. Again, this is just a reminder slide on the core elements on the SAT, relevant words in context, right? It goes into more detail on what these are. Command of evidence. Right? Command of evidence is also explained in this slide. Analysis in science and social studies. Right? Analysis in science and social studies, students will apply their reading skills to answer questions in science, history, and social studies. So this is a way for us to look back at the core elements and see, okay, well, which elements are associated with the reading section, right? Okay, and founding documents and Great Global Conversation has a lot to do with the reading section. And finally, the transitions into the SAT reading passage content. Right? So this goes into the numbers of the percentages of what each category makes up of the SAT. Right? So we have the US and world literature, which takes up 20% of the test. Contains one passage that is 500 to 750 words in length, 10 multiple choice questions, and history and social studies makes up 40% of the test. 2 passages, or 1 passage and 1 pair of passages, that are 500 to 750 words in length, with 10 to 11 questions each, which makes up, like previously stated, 40% of the test. In addition, you will also see 1 to 2 graphics relating to history and social studies. Science makes up 40% of the test and is 2 passages, for 1 passage and 1 pair of passages, 50 to 750 words in length, and also has 10 to 11 questions each, right? And we'll also have 1 to 2 graphics. SAT reading, right? So Things that relate to SAT reading are text complexity, information and ideas, rhetoric, and synthesis. Right? And it goes into detail on what rhetoric is, what synthesis is. Right? Questions that focus on rhetorical analysis of the task, questions that focus on synthesizing multiple sources of information. Right? Information and ideas, right? Reading closely, citing textual evidence, determining central ideas and themes, summarizing, understanding relationships, and interpreting words and phrases in context. So it's just going into detail on what these are. Right? So first you present the main categories, and then it goes into detail of each category. You know what each category is relating to. Rhetoric, right? Going into specifics about rhetoric, analyzing word choice, text structure, point of view, purpose, and argument all relate to rhetoric. Synthesis, right? Analyzing multiple texts, analyzing quantitative information. Right? It's related to synthesis. All right, approaching the reading test. Right? Plan your approach. Read one passage at a time. Try to answer all questions related to it before moving to the next passage. Read the passage introduction for more important information. Pick and skip questions, answering easy ones first. Read the whole passage unless given a line reference question. Strategy. Marking up the passage. Right? Use pencil on paper to underline or circle key information on a passage. This helps to stay focused, understand what you read, and come back to important information later. Underline 2 to 3 main ideas per paragraph. Main ideas relate to the 5 W's. Right? Who, what, where, when, and why. And here's just an example of what it might look like marking up the passage. Right? Identifying the 5 W's in the passage, underlining important information. Summarizing. As you read, make a summary after each paragraph. Use underlined words to help you. Now this goes a long way with a lot of students just because after reading a passage, a student will immediately forget what they read. So as they read, I encourage students to write in their own words in the margins what that paragraph means to them in their own words. Right? Summarizing strategy breaks up the passage into smaller parts and helps to understand the paragraph and remember key information. And here's an example of what that looks like. Okay. So in this slide, first it shows them, okay, what does it look like to summarize paragraphs? And in the next slide, it'll give you some empty brackets. Right? So we're trying to encourage students to practice and use their own words to summarize these paragraphs. Right? And it's even given, it shows you exactly what page you can find these on too, on page 41 and on page 42. Right? And the best thing is you can look at the answer key in the back of the book, right? And it tells you it's on page 720. Strategy. Refer back to the passage. Correct answers to questions are either explicitly stated in the passage or can be inferred by reading between the lines. Refer back to the passage when answering a question and look for lines or words in the text that support your answer. Don't answer questions based on your memory alone, and don't rely on your own knowledge or opinion of a subject. When given a line reference, read 2 to 3 lines before and after the one you are asked about. Right? So knowing the context of the question is important. And here's an example of referring back to the passage. Right? Skim the 2 lines above and below the line reference to answer the question. Think for yourself. Read answer choices knowing what you are looking for. Once you read a question, come up with your own answer. Okay, so this is a good strategy for students because people tend to rely on the question and answer choices as a crutch, right? Where we're trying to encourage students to come up with their own answer first and compare what they think of with the actual answer choices. Right? Chances are that if they come up with something on their own and they see that as an answer choice, that may be the correct answer. And here's an example. of thinking for yourself, right? And it can be found on page 41 and 42. Refer back to the Cavallini passage that was marked up and summarized previously. So it's just flowing through the book. You're trying to get the students to interact with both the book and with each other, right, throughout the Prezi. Okay. Relevant words in context and analysis in science and social studies. So these questions are a way to show how there are different categories related to specific questions. Right? So in this question has to do with relevant words in context and analysis in science and social studies. So these question types, or these questions, cross over multiple categories. And of course, as you go through these questions with the class, it will also show you the answers, right? So you don't have to be an expert and know all the answers yourself. And here's an example of a question or passage that is related to relevant words in context and founding documents in Great Global Conversation. The next slide shows an example of command of evidence and analysis in science and social studies. Right, so you can see how a lot of these categories intersect. Right? And again, the answer will be provided, so you don't have to know the answer yourself. Right? Informational graphics. Now, students tend to struggle with one, long-winded questions, and two, graphical information. And so when the two are combined, it's doubly difficult for students. Right? And this is an example that you can go over with the class, and it's fairly straightforward. It's just reading the passage and then trying to analyze the data that is given to you in the graph at the top right. And the answer is provided for you, so as you go through, you can just go to the next slide and it'll show you exactly what the answer is. And I encourage teachers, especially teachers who are new to the program, to look through each slide before class and just think about the questions on your own. And by the time that you present it, you can have an understanding or at least exposure to the questions, so that when questions arise from the students, you are a little bit better prepared to tackle those questions. Okay, classwork. Classwork number 1 for the reading section, right? Reading the passage on page 54 and answering questions 1 through 10. Right? Again, classwork will always be provided throughout the Prezi presentations to have students interact with the book. Right? Classwork number 2, reading pages 56 to 57, answering questions 11 through 21. Right? And all the answers are provided in the back of the book, right? And it shows you on page 721. Right? You can go and look at the answers there. So you don't have to have all the answers. And I know a lot of teachers who are uncomfortable with English who can still facilitate the class because most of the answers, well, all the answers are provided in the back of the book, and many have explanations to them as well. Homework for the reading section on the SAT, pages 493 to 496 in practice test 1. Right? Reading test passage with questions 1 through 10. Employ the strategies that you learned. Read the passage and answer questions on pages 493 to 496. Time yourself to see how long it takes you. So we're trying to get the students used to timing themselves and really keeping track of where they're spending their time and utilizing all the strategies that we're showing them. So we've already shown them a very wide variety of strategies at this point by the end of the second Prezi presentation, and so they are better equipped to measure how they're doing while they take the exams. Right? And of course, the answers are all found on page 727. Right? And that is the last slide provided in the reading section. I will be seeing you again on the next training video.